I'm all about the prompts. I'm all about the setting the mood. So, how are you?
Hey, good, great. How are you?
I'm doing
Thanks
well.
everyone for sitting for so long and listening to everyone and joining. I appreciate it.
So, tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, and again, I like to people know you from a personal perspective. So, tell a little bit about your background.
So I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan, a little bit chillier and gray than San Diego. I have a wife and two daughters, a 6-year-old and a 8-week-old that she just gave birth to. So there's a lot going on at home right now. I was able to sneak away for this, which was cool. And then we just moved to San Diego about a little over a year ago. So decided to get out of the cold. I work remotely, and it was just either now or never, right? We homeschool my daughter, and when we got to the point where we were just like, this is too much. I grew up there, she grew up in Maine, and so it was just kind of one of those moments after the pandemic of get me out of here.
All right. So talk a little bit about Array, about the company and what you do there.
Yeah, so Array is a remote-first fintech company. We are based, there's an office in New York City, but we are global, so people all over the map, a lot of people on the East Coast, and we are software as a service. So we do embedded financial tools for different companies, financial institutions, and banks, things like that. So fairly new, we're only about almost 3 years old. I've been with the company for 2.5 years. Known the CEO for quite some time, and he actually brought me on to kind of head up their people function, essentially round out what is their people function going to look like. He came to me and said, hey, listen, I'm really good at a lot of things, but I'm not good at people. So I was able to kind of bring in a head of talent acquisition. We brought in a chief people officer, and I think we have 9 people on our people team now. Wow. We went from 30, I want to say around 30 contractors to 200, over 200 employees. Unfortunately, we just did a layoff of about 40 people. If you've heard anything about the tech industry or know anything about it, that's big right now. So 40 people layoff. I was on parental leave while that happened, but still, that was tough.
I'm sure it was. So let's talk about emotional intelligence in the workplace. I think we all get it at a basic level, but talk about emotional intelligence. What is that? Yeah,
so emotional intelligence essentially is the capacity to be aware of and control your emotions to better your kind of interpersonal relationships. It's just to preface this, I am not a therapist, I am not a doctor. All of my experience has come from life experience, which we can get into a little bit, of that, and then just truly kind of my passion of like watching these new generations come up in the workplace and trying to kind of figure out what this looks like in corporate America and startups, things like that. So that's kind of just like a little bit about my background. Sure. I think to go a little further back and where I started with all of this is I started a business with my 3 sisters. I have 4 sisters and 1 brother. I started a organic cold pressed juice company, a food and beverage company. It's about 13 years old now, 10 years ago. I worked with them. People are always like, how do you work with your family? How do you work with your sisters? And I always say it's like a long-term relationship. In the beginning, it's really great. You have your honeymoon phase, it's super cool, everything's really fun, and then you hit this hump where it's like, I hate you, I don't want to do this anymore, and you almost break up, and then you kind of get over that hump and everything's good again. So I did that for 10 years, learned so much about myself, about business, about people, got to the point where I became way too stressed out running my own business. It became unsustainable for me, for my mental health. And this is kind of where the journey of emotional intelligence and my passion went into that is I was not treating people, not treating my employees properly. I was not treating myself properly. I was going home and being rude to my family. And this was right before the pandemic hit an impasse where I was saying like, this is just toxic. This is bad. It's bad for me. It's bad for my family. I can't do it anymore. I still love my sisters, have a great relationship with them. It's nothing against them. It was just the stress of the business became too much for me. So I did a few things. I gave up alcohol. I wasn't really that big of a drinker, but I got to the point where I said, okay, I'm going home and I'm dealing with this stress by having a few drinks at night, and then it's starting all over the next day. So I really kind of decided I'm going to step away from the business. My sisters still run it. It's going great. Still in Detroit. They're actually expanding nationally. It's called Drought. If you ever want to check it out, it's a juice company. And yeah, so I stepped away right before the pandemic. Decided no more booze. Going to spend time with my family. Going to take this time to just kind of reconnect with myself. And I just went hard into the emotional intelligence realm of like, what is this? How do I kind of reconnect with myself, rediscover like, who am I? How am I treating people? I went from being extremely reactive to kind of really understanding like what is making me react to people in this way. So that was the beginning of it. That was where I started, and this was probably, I want to say, it's been 4 years now. And explaining that to my friend turned CEO of Array now, and he just said, like, this is great. Like, if we're going to start this company, we need someone like you to kind of help us understand how we're going to kind of integrate these, like I said, different generations, their behaviors in the workplace, things like that. So that's how it all kind of came to and where I'm at right now.
Wow. Oh, that's good. So how do you apply it? So you have leaders in the room, entrepreneurs in the room. How do you even begin to apply emotional intelligence? Do you start with the CEO and do an assessment there and work your way down? Like, how do you start to apply that?
No, that's a great question, and I think so. I had a few great conversations. I don't know if Lewis is still in the room and a few other people, but I had some really good conversations last night, or not last night, but the night before, at the opening of. It is a journey. Emotional intelligence is a journey. It's not with I think, intelligence, there's assessments, there's all these things. Stephanie, by the way, if you need a job, we can talk after. Because it's how do we measure emotional intelligence is a big thing. But it's something where you really have to kind of look within, right? Like, it's not just something where it's like, okay, we want everyone at our company to be emotionally intelligent. That's not how it works. And it's truly hard, I think, when you have someone like a CEO of a company that's really like, our CEO, for example, is very strong-willed in his, opinions and how he looks at things. And so starting there wasn't how we were going to do it. Okay. Where I came in was more as a coach to the people and to help them understand, okay, like how do you, and a lot of this is going to sound really flowery, so if I go too far off on a tangent here, don't take it for what it's worth. But how are people truly feeling in their bodies? And this is kind of where I came from, is like, are they super stressed when they open their computers? Are they in a position where or they come in and they're really happy and they love their job? So it's evaluating, how do you feel? Emotionally, truly. Sure. And then how are you interacting with people at work? How is that affecting your relationships? Things like that. So what I do at Array is that. It's a lot of coaching. It's a lot of talking to people about their feelings. It's kind of like, addressing the root cause of some of this stuff. And then,
so you're solving like employee conflicts?
And then going, exactly. Okay. Yeah, and then going back and helping them understand, why do you feel this way? Why is this transpiring the way it is? And then how do we deal with those actual issues? So for me, that's the work that I do, because starting at an executive level was not really an option for us. Because for us, I believe the way that our organization is going to change or advance is by the executives, by the CEO saying like, oh wow, look how evolved my workforce is becoming. I have no choice but to, follow suit, listen to what they're saying, kind of get on board with how everything's transpiring.
So how was that introduced to the company? Because that's a really transformative approach, and some people may feel a certain way about it. So how did you guys, and it sounds like you're currently going through it now. So how was it introduced? What was some of the initial feedback? Were people lining up to do an assessment on me, you know, kind
Yeah,
of deal.
no, and I think we're approaching it, how we're approaching it is less of it's a lot different from surveys and
Sure.
Pulse or all those things. It is more kind of like one-on-one, how are you feeling? It's it is a different approach.
More
And people,
hands-on.
and in terms of how people are reacting, they're loving it. They love that they get more of and listen, we're a smaller company. We have an opportunity to do it this way. It was pitched by me and a few other people, like, let's try this way and see
Sure.
how it's, see how it transpires. Obviously, that's why I asked Stephanie if she wanted a job. We're gonna have to get to the point where we are starting to measure some of this stuff and really understanding, like, is this working? Are people responding to this? Things like that. So if that makes sense.
It does. And so I think I understand the benefit to a company, but can you talk to that? Does that translate to the bottom line in some way, or is it just more about culture, which also translates to the bottom line?
Yeah, I think someone asked a good question the other day of, like how do you measure this, right? Like how do you kind of understand, is this working? Is this something that's benefiting the company? And I think it is more of a cultural thing where you're either seeing like the investment in it, it's either happening or it's not. And your culture is either, and I think to Stephanie's presentation is like, you see from a leader's perspective, if you're not investing in your leaders, if you're not ensuring that they are emotionally intelligent and have the capacity to give people what they require nowadays, you're going to see it in your bottom line. You're going to see it,
Sure.
in your culture. So it's both places, I would say.
Wow. So walk me through, and you may, without giving names or anything, walk me through what a session would be like. So let's say I didn't have a conflict with anyone, but we're rolling this out through the company. So what's a onboarding or a session like to just get me to open up about things that,
Yeah, so typically, great question. Typically how my kind of partner team deals with things is we have the opportunity, like I said, because we're a smaller company, and I think bigger companies do too, so long as they have the people and the infrastructure, to really understand who they are. What generation are they coming in from? Like, what do they have families? Do they not have families? What are their interests? It's really truly understanding people from a personal perspective, because right now, I believe at this point in time, you can't work, especially if people are working remotely or hybrid, is becoming so ingrained with their personal life that we have to figure out how we're kind of meshing the two. And so understanding, what are they going through at home? What are they dealing with? Some of these things that maybe companies typically don't care about or haven't cared about in the past, we're trying to go a little deeper and say, like, no, we know this person and we understand what they're going through. So then we know when to back off, when to push, like how we can kind of have this relationship. So it's essentially, building that relationship from the beginning, and then being able to ongoing, like when things arise, we know how to approach it. It's a little bit like therapy. We have some people that are a little bit more trained on our team than I am in terms of like, that type of, like we do have a therapist on the team actually, but I stay away from too much of that stuff. So yeah, it's a lot of, it's emotion. Like my dad always used to say, like, it's just business. Like my dad is a big entrepreneur, business guy. He's like, it's just business. Like, just don't get so emotional. And now it's like, if you tell someone that, if you tell Gen Z or, don't be so emotional, like you don't have an employee anymore.
Very true. Very true.
So that's where what we're trying to kind of balance and understand.
And I guess in some way, if you start to look at the data behind it, that can inform benefits packages and that kind of thing. Do you think so? Or like
Absolutely. Yep. I was actually just talking to someone that I consult with the other day about, you say, okay, here's your salary. Here's, you can have some stock options in the company. Sometimes people don't even understand what that means. And they're like, what does this mean? What does that mean? If I leave the company, do I even get anything? So one thing we're trying to do is currently reevaluate that. Like for instance, at Array, we offer everyone some stock options, everyone that joins the company. Some people don't even care about that. So they're saying like, well, I'd like to get paid a little bit more in lieu of like, I might not even be at this job. This just might be like a placeholder for me for a year. So there's so many nuances to it of how understanding people. And that's not to say that as a business, you should just do whatever, whatever incoming employees say to do, but it's just understanding this new workforce and kind of what they're demanding and being ahead of it so that we know, are we offering something that's actually exciting for people that's going to get them in terms of like compensation and benefits, or is this not even, are we just missing the mark? Are we doing what all of the other tech companies are doing?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So as you guys grow, do you envision this approach living under HR, under each department? How would you, just looking ahead, how would you apply it as you grow and mature as an organization?
Yeah, I mean, I think to my point earlier about hiring Stephanie, I know I keep saying it, I'm at this point.
She's putting it out in the universe.
For me, how to make it sustainable is like right now, the way we are currently doing it is, it's great. It's very emotional. It's very flowery, but it's how do we make it sustainable? How do we start measuring?
At some point, it's scale.
Yeah, how do we scale it, right? So if we want to grow as an organization, that is going to be the next question, and that is currently the topic of conversation.
Sure.
We're about a year into doing it like this, and people love it. Like, I mean, the response we get from the investment that we're making in it is great. It's just currently not scalable, I would say, at the way we're doing it.
Yeah. So what would be your so if there are rooms full of CEOs from different companies, different sectors, what would be your pitch to them to consider this kind of approach?
It's tough. Executive CEOs, that's the hardest one because you get a lot of people that they're nothing against CEOs, executives at all, but a lot of them are set in their ways and they have a lot of experience and they say, okay, this is how my business is going to run. Sometimes it's they'll say certain things. I care about the people, blah, 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 but behind the scenes, they're like, I need to, and I understand as a prior business owner, it's like, at the end of the day, you also have to understand the business needs and you have to be able to be sustainable and stay in business and make money, or you don't have, you can't have employees.
They may view it as a nice to do,
exactly.
not a must do, but I think the folks in the room too understand that it could impact the business in a positive way by doing this, and so just understand how to sell it.
Part of it is coaching also the employees in infusing that maturity in them to understand, and that's another thing we're doing is in understanding the business needs. Like, this isn't all just emotional intelligence, not all just flowery, right? It's also okay, my part in this is X, right? Like, I have to also care about the business. I have to care about my part and how I'm fitting into this piece of the puzzle. So I think for us, that's the other side of it, is to make sure that they understand how we actually go about this. So yeah.
Awesome. We have a few minutes left. I want to open it up to the group, and thank you for doing this, by the way. This is fascinating stuff.
Yeah, it's a little bit more of like a, like I said, I keep using the word flowery, but it's, it's emotional, right? So I'm happy to answer any questions, or if anyone has experiences in their work, current organizations, I'd love to.
I have a comment.
Yeah.
What it reminds me of is, have you seen Billions?
Oh yeah.
That's what this
The role, totally. Wendy.
That's what people call me. That's what some people call me. Yeah.
So, anybody else? We got the fireplace going. Now's the time to share how you're feeling. Yeah. Now's the time. Yeah, that's what we should have had music too.
Yeah, another great, I think, I work closely with our director of DE&I, so I think for us, a huge piece of the puzzle is just like understanding like our inclusivity level and like what we're doing on that side of things. Like, this is an equal piece of the puzzle. So she and I work very closely together on not just like, okay, how do we build this really great culture, but it's like, where is our culture at, and what is it going to require to actually make sure it's
Sure.
not toxic? It's not the, like all those things. Because I don't think you can build a culture, right? Like I think it's just, it organically happens, and we're in charge of making sure that it doesn't go off the rails, but actually goes in a way of like, wow, this is a company I really want to work for.
Awesome. Any questions before we wrap? Hey, Jessie, thank you so much for this. A round of applause.
Yeah, no
please.
problem. Thank you. Appreciate it.